Hey, my name is Nathan. I'm 31 years old, and for the past 3 years I've lived and worked at the Millfield Arms apartment complex in Caldwell, Ohio. A 48-unit building on the east side of town, built in 1962, which means it has all the particular dignity and all the particular problems of a building that has been useful for 60 years and repaired in layers like geological strata. New solutions installed on top of old ones that nobody ever fully removed. I am the maintenance technician. That means I carry a master key to every unit in the building, a tool bag that rides in the passenger seat of my truck like a second spine, and I am on call 6 days a week for whatever breaks, leaks, seizes, or stops doing what it was built to do. In exchange, I get a salary and a benefits package that is decent enough, and apartment 7B at a reduced rate, second floor, southeast corner, facing the inner courtyard. I know this building the way a doctor knows a patient who has been coming in for 30 years, not the version they present when they know they're being watched, but the actual version that shows itself in the symptoms they've stopped mentioning because they've lived with them long enough to call them normal. I know which radiator on the 3rd floor knocks twice every October when the heat first kicks on, and I know it's not a structural problem. It's air in the line, and I've bled it twice and it comes back. Because the return valve is original to 1962 and will eventually need replacing. But the building's capital budget doesn't have room for it yet. I know which windows on the 2nd floor seal wrong and let a draft in at the left edge when the wind comes from the northeast. I know which kitchen drain on the 4th floor has been running slow for 3 months. And I know the tenant up there has stopped reporting it because she's adjusted, put in a little strainer, moved on, decided it wasn't worth the conversation. This is the thing about maintenance work that I've never been able to explain to someone who hasn't done it. The job isn't just fixing what's broken. The job is paying attention to the whole system and understanding the difference between something that broke recently and something that has been failing quietly for a long time. Those two situations look almost identical on the surface. The difference is what you find when you open them up. I wake up at 6 most mornings, check the overnight log, do a 20-minute walk of the building's exterior and mechanical systems, eat breakfast standing over my kitchen sink. Eggs, usually. Sometimes just toast. I'm not precious about it. And by 7:30, I'm in someone's unit, or underneath a sink, or up on the roof. I finish around 5:30. I come back to 7B. Heat up whatever I made on Sunday. I cook in batches on Sundays, the only day I actually cook. Big pots of soup or chili or something that holds up through the week. I eat at the small table by the window, watch whatever game is on, and by 9:30 the apartment is quiet in a particular way that I've gotten used to over 3 years. The phone doesn't ring much after 8. I mean maintenance calls. I don't get many other kinds. 2 years ago there was Sarah. That ended in the parking lot of a diner on Route 40 on a Thursday evening I don't think about in detail anymore. She said she'd been waiting for me to need something from her. Not help with something, but to actually need someone. The way people need people. And I stood there in the parking lot, not knowing what to say, because I didn't fully understand what she meant. She said that was exactly the problem. She got in her car. I drove home, and the lot at the building was empty when I got back, and all 48 windows were dark. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand the particular shape of the life I was living when any of this happened. Not a bad life. Not one worth complaining about. A life I had built to run well on its own. Very few moving parts that could fail. Very little that depended on another person to function. I was good at it. I'd become expert at it. I just hadn't understood yet that a system running at 60% efficiency is not the same thing as a system running fine. That Thursday morning in November is where this story starts. She had been in apartment 14 for 8 months by then. Her name was Claire Maddox. She was 28, though I didn't know that until later. She'd taken the lease from a woman named Hensley, moved in quietly on a Saturday in March, and her first maintenance request came in 6 days after that. A slow drain in the bathroom sink. Moderate severity. Polite language, no urgency. Please fix at your convenience. I fixed it that following Monday. She wasn't home. I left the standard note on her counter with the repair log details. Locked up. Moved on. After that, 8 months and nothing. In my experience, that means one of two things. Either the unit is in perfect shape, which no unit at the Millfield Arms ever is, or the tenant has made a private decision to manage their own situations rather than ask. In 48 units over 3 years, I've learned to read the difference. The first type stops generating requests because nothing is going wrong. The second type stops generating requests because something went wrong, and they didn't report it. And now they've adjusted. In apartment 14, the bathroom window had been sealing about 30% worse since September. I'd spotted it during my October roof inspection and added it to the capital list, but hadn't knocked to mention it. The hallway weather seal on her door had a gap at the bottom left corner that let cold in during north winds. Her cabinet door above the refrigerator had a hinge gradually pulling out of the frame. I could hear it when I was in the hall, and she opened it. She'd never said a word about any of it. I saw her in the hallway sometimes. She always nodded. She had the focused quality of someone perpetually in the middle of a thought that had nothing to do with whoever was nodding at her. She carried her groceries herself, both bags at once, and when the elevator broke in October and I was standing at the stairs, she walked past me with 2 full bags and 3 flights between her and her unit without saying a word. Not unfriendly, just not in the habit of expecting anything. I can't tell you exactly when I started paying attention to her specifically. It was gradual, the way you notice any pattern in a building, not a moment of recognition but an accumulation. Her light stayed on late, most nights, past 11, sometimes past midnight. I registered it from my window during the occasional bad night, the way I register everything in the building automatically, because I've spent 3 years training myself to notice what it's doing. I noticed it the way you notice a crack in the ceiling that's been there so long it's just part of the room. I noticed it, and then I noticed when it changed. The Thursday in November I'm talking about, I was up at 2:30 for no reason I could explain. I walked to the kitchen for water and stood at the window, and the parking lot light threw a pale stripe across the floor. And I looked at the courtyard the way you look at things at 2:30, just to have somewhere to put your eyes. Her light was on in 14. That was normal. I went back to bed. At 6:45, starting my morning loop, I went up the east stairwell to the second floor. Her light was still on. That was not normal. I slowed when I came past 14. I told myself I was just noting it for the log. I had 2 work orders waiting, a broken door chain on 22 and a pipe coupling on 8, and neither was going anywhere. I kept walking. Then I heard it. 3 coughs, close together, muffled through the door. A pause. Another one. I stood there with my hand 4 inches from the door for a moment that went on longer than I'd like to admit. I was aware, the way you are when you're in the middle of talking yourself out of something, of my complete list of reasons to keep going. It was early. She didn't know me past a maintenance note on her counter. She was clearly someone who handled her own situations. A cough is not a maintenance issue. I walked 3 steps down the hall. Then I stopped. I thought about the 2 grocery bags on the stairs. I thought about 8 months and 1 request. I thought about whatever it takes to train yourself not to ask for things, the particular patience for your own inconvenience that is actually something else in disguise. I went back to my apartment. I made soup. My mother taught me to make chicken soup the way you'd teach someone to do any job that matters, slowly, with specific instructions, and with a clear understanding that if you rush it, you'll know. Real broth takes time. The vegetables go in at the right intervals. You don't hurry it. By the time you're done, the apartment smells like somewhere that someone is being taken care of, and that smell is either entirely in your head, or it is the most real thing there is. I've never settled that question. It took 45 minutes. I moved around my kitchen the way I move around a job I know well, automatically, without wasting motion, knowing where everything is. I filled a container. I went back upstairs and knocked twice. Nothing. I knocked again, softer. She opened the door 6 inches and looked at me through the gap. Brown hair loose around her face, one side pressed flat from the pillow. Her face was flushed with the particular warmth of a fever that has been running long enough to become the new normal, not red with embarrassment, but lit from inside, in a way that is not a healthy color. She had a gray blanket pulled around her shoulders and was holding it closed at the throat with one hand, and her eyes had the reddened, overworked look of someone who has been sick long enough that crying about it has stopped being a release and started being just another symptom. She looked at me with careful blankness, the expression of someone deciding in real time whether to be annoyed or confused. I held up the container. "You've been coughing since last night," I said. "I made soup." A long pause. "I'm fine," she said. "I know," I said. "It's just soup." She looked at me. She looked at the container. She was running a calculation. I could see it the way you can see a load-bearing wall from the way the weight is distributed. Whether this was something to manage, whether it would cost her in an exchange she hadn't agreed to. "I don't need anything," she said. "I know that too," I said. "You can have it anyway." She stood there another moment. Then she opened the door. The apartment had the air of a space sealed for a day and a half, with someone running a low fever inside it. Slightly stale, slightly too warm. The contained quality of a room that knows it has been doing its job quietly. Tissues on the coffee table. A water glass. Ibuprofen. A phone on the charger, showing 17%. The plant near the window had been forgotten and was expressing this in the specific way plants do. Leaves angled toward the light in a way that was also slightly pleading. I didn't make a thing of any of it. I set the container on the counter, found a bowl in the second cabinet I tried, ladled soup without being asked, and brought it to the coffee table. She'd sat back on the couch in the posture of someone who lost an argument she hadn't intended to enter and was now working out how to feel about that. She looked at the bowl. She looked at me. "You don't have to stay," she said. "I know," I said, and sat down in the chair across from her. She ate about half the bowl before she stopped. "Where did you learn to make this?" "My mother," I said. "She taught you to cook?" "She taught me to make this specifically. I'm not sure it counts as cooking. I know 6 things. This is one of them." Something shifted in her expression, not quite a smile, but the place where one used to live. "What are the other 5? "Chili, scrambled eggs. But only if they're for me. I don't know why they don't turn out for anyone else. Grilled cheese, a decent steak if I have to, and cornbread from a box, which I include for completeness even though I don't think it counts." The almost smile became something more committed. She pulled the blanket tighter. "I've been sick since Tuesday," she said. The admission came out flat, just information, but it cost her a little and I heard the cost in it. "I figured," I said. Your light was on all night. She looked at me. You noticed that? I was up at 2:30, I said. Your light was on then. When I walked the floor at 6:45, it was still on. She absorbed that. I had a doctor's appointment yesterday, she said. I couldn't drive. I can take you today if you still need to go, I said. You have work orders, she said. I do, I said. And I can take you. It's not a conflict. She looked at me with the full attention she gave everything. Careful. Close. With the instinct of someone who knows the difference between a person performing kindness and a person simply offering it. Okay, she said. Thank you. I took her to the family medicine clinic on Broad Street. A sinus infection that had become an ear infection, the kind of double system problem that means you've been hoping it would resolve on its own for at least a week, which she had been, because of course she had. 2 prescriptions. I filled them at the CVs while she sat in the passenger seat with her forehead against the window and her eyes closed, doing the particular kind of holding together that people do when they are too tired to perform being fine anymore. I drove her home, made sure she drank a full glass of water, checked the refrigerator, a yogurt, half a lemon, leftover pad thai that had been there since before Tuesday, a box of crackers on the second shelf. I made a mental list without saying anything about making it. I went back to my apartment, finished the 2 morning work orders, drove to the Kroger on 83, bought groceries, made a second batch of soup, and left it outside her door with a note about the medication timing. Which one with food? Which one without? When to take the first dose of each. I knocked once, said it was on the doorstep, and left. I'm not telling you this to make it sound like anything it wasn't. I was not performing. I was not operating from some conscious decision to impress her. I was applying to a person the same logic I apply to a building. If you can see something running wrong, and you have the means to address it, you address it. You don't decide it's not your unit. You show up. That is the complete extent of what I was doing. What I didn't understand yet was that she had spent most of her life in a place where no one applied that logic to her. Saturday, around noon, 2 days later. A knock at my door. She was standing in the hall in jeans and a gray sweater, hair pulled back. Upright for what I could tell was probably the first time since Monday. She was holding a small round container, and she looked recovered, but carefully, the way someone looks when they've come back from somewhere and are still taking inventory. She held the container out. I baked, she said. I don't usually bake. They might not be good. I took it. Blueberry muffins from scratch, still faintly warm. I said thank you. She nodded. She was working her way toward something. I could see it the way you can see a door that needs more force than it should take. The resistance of something that has been stuck in its frame for a long time. Can I come in for a minute? She asked. I stepped back. She came in. She sat at my kitchen table. It's a 2-person table I eat at alone and use as a second desk for repair logs. I made coffee. She sat with her hands around the mug and looked at the window for a moment, at the courtyard and the east face of the building, and then she looked at me. No man has ever done this for me before, she said. She said it plainly, not dramatically, not performing a statement for my reaction, just reporting something she had been sitting with for 2 days and had decided needed to be said out loud. I mean it exactly the way it sounds. The soup, the doctor, the medication timing. Nobody has ever just shown up and taken care of something. A pause. I needed you to know that I know that. My throat had closed a little. I kept my hands around the coffee cup. I should have knocked sooner, I said. I noticed your light on 2 nights before Thursday, and I kept walking. She looked at me. Why did you knock Thursday? I heard you coughing, I said. Once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it. She nodded slowly. She looked at the window again. My father left when I was 9, she said. The flatness of it was the thing, the same tone you use for something you've said enough times that it no longer surprises you. Not as an explanation. Not a bid for sympathy. Just context. There were 3 of us. My mother did everything she could. But there was a lot to do, and not enough of her, and what I learned was that if I needed something, I was better off figuring it out myself. A pause. I moved here from Columbus 8 months ago because I'd spent a long time in a place where I'd stopped asking for things and wasn't getting them anyway, and I kept waiting for that to change. I thought starting over alone was the smarter way, like if there's no one to let you down, there's no letting down. What happened in Columbus? I said. A man who was very good at seeming like someone who showed up, she said. Who wasn't. We sat with that. You've been sick since Tuesday, I said. If I hadn't knocked, what would you have done? Called a cab. Made it work. I know you would have, I said. That's not what I'm asking. She was quiet for a moment. Outside, a car pulled out of the lot. I think I'd gotten so used to carrying everything that I'd stopped noticing it was heavy, she said. That's the honest answer. I thought about a heating element I'd replaced once in a 3rd-floor unit. The tenant had been living with an apartment running at 60% of its designed warmth for 2 full winters. She'd worn extra layers. She'd adjusted her whole life around the cold and stopped noticing it was wrong. When I finally replaced the element and the apartment heated the way it was supposed to, she'd stood in the middle of her living room for a full minute, just feeling it, she said. I forgot what it was supposed to feel like. I thought about how many things you can forget are supposed to be different. I'm glad I knocked, I said. She looked at me. Her expression was the most open I'd seen it, not soft, exactly, but present in the way of someone who has decided, in this specific moment, to be exactly where they are. Me too, she said. In the weeks after that, the shape of things changed gradually and without announcement. She left her door open on Wednesday evenings when I was doing my 2nd-floor checks. We started talking for 10, 15 minutes in the doorway. She was rereading a novel she'd first read in college and finding it entirely different the 2nd time, which she mentioned with the particular pleasure of someone who likes having their assumptions corrected. She had a bookshelf she'd built herself, 2 planks on adjustable brackets, and it was not quite level. I noticed it every time I came in. One evening she caught me looking at it and said, before I could speak, I know it's not level. 3 degrees off, I said. I measured it. I was going to fix it, but I couldn't get the bracket to go back in the right spot, and I decided it was close enough. It'll shift further over time, I said. The wall anchor went in too shallow. That's the actual problem. She looked at the shelf. Then at me. You could just fix it, she said. I could, I said. She thought about that for a moment. I want to watch, she said. So I know how for next time. I fixed the bracket, reset the shelf, checked the level. She stood behind me and slightly to the left, and watched with the focus of someone who is learning something they actually intend to use. When I stood up and the shelf was true, she looked at it for a moment in silence. That's the most satisfying thing I've seen all week, she said. Low bar, I said. It's November in Caldwell, she said. The bar is what it is. I left the correct anchors and wall screws on her counter. That evening she texted the maintenance line, first time she'd used anything but the request form, asking whether those anchors would work for a picture hook. I texted back yes, pre-drill a 1/4 inch. She replied, understood. I noted that she communicated the way she did everything else, briefly, and with complete certainty. After that, she started leaving things outside my door. Containers with sticky notes. Experimental. Do not expect much. Try the corner ones. They're better. Made too much because math is not my gift. A portion of pasta one evening with a note that said specifically not for the maintenance log. This is just for you. I started bringing coffee when I was doing my morning walk, and she was leaving for work around the same time. We did this without discussing it, and without making it into anything. Around this time, something happened that rearranged my understanding of who she was. I was doing a routine inspection on the elevator shaft one afternoon when she knocked on the open utility room door holding a printout she'd noticed from her work as a project coordinator, where she dealt with contractors all day, that the HVAC unit servicing the East Wing had a refrigerant pressure issue running about 12% below spec. She'd pulled the building's energy certification records. She thought we might qualify for a state efficiency retrofit grant if the issue was documented before year-end. She had the application form. I looked at the printout. It was technically accurate. The HVAC issue had been on my capital list for 2 months. You pulled the building certification records, I said. I was curious, she said, with the modesty of someone who knows they're underselling it. How long did that take you? About 20 minutes, she said. The grant application is almost identical to forms I use at work. I can walk you through it if you want. I looked at her. She looked back at me with that direct, careful attention that I had stopped trying to read as anything other than exactly what it was. A person paying attention, being useful, not waiting to be invited. I'll get you access to the utility account, I said. She got us the grant, approved in February, 18 months of reduced operating costs. Dolores, our property manager, 11 years in that office. She has seen everyone and everything that has moved through this building, sent me a note saying she didn't know what I'd done differently this year, but to keep doing it. I did not tell her. It wasn't me. Some things don't belong in the log. Dolores found me in the utility room in early December. She is always finding me in the utility room. I think she knows my schedule better than I do. She sat on the transformer housing with her coffee and looked at me with the expression she uses when she has decided something is going to be said, whether I want it to be or not. I've been watching you bring her coffee for 3 weeks, she said. I said I bring a few tenants coffee occasionally. It wasn't a thing. Nathan, Dolores said. I counted. 16 mornings. Same timing. Same temperature from what I can see. She looked at me. A house with a woman in it shouldn't have a cold stove. You know that better than anyone. She finished her coffee. You're very good at keeping this building running. What you're not good at is letting something be what it is, instead of just another work order. Don't wait until it's an emergency before you address it. I said I would handle it. She looked at me over the rim of her cup. You're already handling it, she said. You just haven't admitted that yet. The Sunday before Christmas was warm in the particular way of a December that hasn't fully committed to itself. Borrowed warmth. The kind that feels like something borrowed. I was up on a ladder clearing the east gutters when Claire came out with 2 coffees and sat on the low courtyard wall. She was quiet for a while, watching me work, in the easy way that had become normal between us. You know every inch of this building, she said eventually. That's the job, I said. It's more than knowing the specs, she said. You can hear when something's wrong before the numbers show it. The HVAC thing, I found it in the records. But you already had it on your list. She paused. What does mine sound like? 14. I came down a rung. I thought about how to say it accurately. It sounds like someone keeping very careful track of everything, I said. The kind of accounting you do when you don't have anyone helping you account for it. She looked at her coffee. Is that bad? It's not bad, I said. It's a lot to carry alone. I came down the rest of the ladder, and she handed me the second coffee. We sat on the wall together. The courtyard had its December quiet, a suspended, held-breath quiet, waiting for its season to arrive. I moved here to prove I could be okay alone, she said. And I've proven it. I know I can. She paused. I just don't think I want to be. Not the way I've been being. I looked at the gutter I'd just cleared. I was aware of her beside me in the specific way I'd been aware of her for several weeks. Not the abstract awareness of a person nearby, but the awareness of this person, in this particular proximity, with this particular weight. That's not me saying something to you specifically, she added. I know, I said. She looked at me sideways. You really are slow, she said. I laughed. It surprised me. I know, I said. You have tells, she said. The coffee. You figured out how I drink it by the second week. Too hot and I don't drink it fast enough, so you let it sit 2 minutes before you bring it. I've been watching you do that for a month and a half. My fingers tightened on the cup. I pay attention to things, I said. I know, she said. Me too. She looked at the courtyard. I'm not rushing you. I'm just telling you I've noticed. The thing happened in the second week of January, on a Tuesday evening just before 5:30. I was loading a pipe coupling into my truck when a silver car pulled into the visitor lot too fast, parking in a way that said the driver had never once thought about whether he was in someone's way. The man who got out was tall, dressed too well for a Tuesday in Caldwell, a coat that fit because it had been tailored, shoes that had been polished in a city and had not expected Ohio clay. He walked with the absolute stride of someone who has never had to navigate a space that didn't expect him. He asked me, without introduction, which unit was Claire Maddox's. I set the coupling down. You know someone in the building? Claire Maddox, he said. Brown hair, about here. He indicated her height with his hand, the gesture people use for describing the dimensions of furniture. I don't know her unit number. I don't give out unit numbers, I said. He refocused on me with actual attention. I'm an old friend. I'll let her know someone's here, I said. She can come down if she wants. He decided on charm. I just need 5 minutes, he said, with a smile that had worked in a lot of rooms. I'll let her know you're here, I said again, same tone. I called Claire from my cell, described him. Said his name was Dan when he heard me describing him and said it himself. A short silence on her end. I'll come down, she said. She came out the main entrance and crossed the lot, and I watched her see him. She stopped for 2 full seconds, not from surprise, I don't think, but from deciding how she intended to stand when she reached him. Then, she walked the rest of the way. He started talking before she was fully across. He'd been trying to reach her. He'd had reasons. At the time he needed her to understand now. He'd been thinking about this for months. If she would just give him 10 minutes, Dan, she said. Just the name. Her voice was exactly the temperature of what she actually felt. Not cold, not performed, not a degree warmer or cooler than the truth. He stopped. I moved to Caldwell, she said. That was my answer. Everything I said before I left was my answer. I'm not going to have a different conversation than the one we already finished. You're not being fair, he said. The charm was gone, the pressure underneath showing through like a subfloor under damaged carpet. I drove 3 hours. You won't give me 10 minutes? He looked at me. Who is that? I hadn't moved. I was standing by the truck exactly where I'd been. He maintains the building, she said. That's who he is here. She had used my exact words from the phone call. I don't know if she meant to. It landed the same way regardless. He looked at her for a long moment with the expression of someone who had driven 3 hours with a completely different ending to this in his head and was now revising in real time. Then he looked at me, not to confront me, I think, but because I was the only other person there and he needed somewhere to put the confusion. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move. "She's choosing to stay here," I said. "That's the answer." He stood there a few more seconds. Then he walked back to the car, not fast, not slow, in the manner of someone managing the optics of a retreat. He pulled out of the lot the wrong way, against the arrows. It was the most honest thing he'd done since he arrived. She and I stood in the parking lot. The cold had its January edge, less about temperature than exposure, the feeling of being exactly where you are with nothing between you and it. She was holding her coat closed at the throat in the reflexive way you hold yourself together after something that required more than it should have, even when it went the way you needed it to. "He'll leave you alone now?" I said. "Yes," she said. She let out a slow breath. I knew that was coming since October. I needed to do it in person for it to be real. She looked at me. "I'm okay." "I know," I said. We stood there. The parking light above us had been running at 70% of its rated output for 2 weeks. I had a work order for it on the list. In its reduced light, she looked exactly like herself. No more and no less. Not undone. Not anything other than what she was. A person standing in a cold parking lot who had just done something hard and was now breathing through the aftermath. I said her name. She looked at me. "I've been paying attention," I said, "to the way you drink your coffee. And to a few other things. For a while now." She waited. "I've been careful not to make it into anything," I said, "because I know why you came here. I know what you were working out. And I didn't want to be something that complicated that." I stopped. Started again. "I've been very good my whole life at noticing what's wrong and adding it to the list and not acting on it, because acting on it means depending on the outcome, and depending on the outcome means it could go wrong. And 2 years ago I was standing in a parking lot exactly like this one being told that's why I was alone. So I stopped. "Nathan," she said. "I'm getting there," I said. "I know you are," she said. "Take your time." "I don't want to take more time," I said. "I've been taking time for 3 months. I'm done taking time." I looked at her directly. I don't know when it started. Maybe the morning with the muffins and the note that said they might not be good. Maybe before that. Maybe the first time you watched me fix your bookshelf like you were memorizing it for next time. I paused. I don't want to just notice things from across the hall. I have been doing that for a long time. I know the difference between paying attention to something and actually being present for it. I know the difference. I just kept applying the one to the building and not to myself. I looked at the pavement for a moment. "And I'm sorry for that," I said. "The 2 nights before Thursday when your light was on and I kept walking. The weather seal on your door, the window. The things I could see were wrong and didn't address because they weren't emergencies yet. You deserved someone paying attention before it became an emergency." The lot was very quiet. Her hands had come away from her coat. "I think I started trusting you the day you brought me soup," she said. Her voice was unhurried, the voice she used when she was saying exactly what she meant with nothing modified for the listener. Not because of the soup, because of the chair. "You sat down in the chair, and you didn't make it into something I owed you. I knew within about 5 minutes that you were a person I hadn't met before." I looked at her. "I've been waiting for you to figure it out," she said. "For longer than you might think. I wasn't rushing you. I'm still not. A step forward. But I'm also not going to stand in a January parking lot all night while you get there." I closed the distance. She put her hand flat on the front of my coat. I kissed her. And it was the kind of kiss that can only happen after months of learning someone in every other way first. Careful at first, then not careful, then exactly what it was supposed to be, in the particular warmth of two people who have been standing next to something for a long time and are finally allowed to stand inside it. When we stopped, she kept her hand on my coat. "Slow," she said quietly. "I know," I said. "I mean it affectionately," she said. "I know that too," I said. That was January. By the following May, the parking lot light had a new ballast and was running at full output. I mention this only because it was the last item on that winter's list, and clearing it meant the list was finally clean. Claire and I have been together for about 4 months, depending on where you start counting. She brought a second chair out to the East Landing in March, and most evenings, when the weather cooperates, we eat dinner out there and watch the courtyard go dark, and sometimes we talk and sometimes we don't, and both are fine in a way that things haven't been fine for me in a long time. She got a promotion in March, senior project coordinator, and she is very good at her job in the specific way that people are good at their jobs when the work was made for the particular way their mind operates. She is direct and specific, and completely uninterested in performing anything she doesn't mean. Her contractors call her because she makes decisions and doesn't reverse them. Her bookshelf is level now. She added 2 more shelves herself in April. Right anchors, pre-drilled holes, measured twice. They are almost level. She showed me the half degree of error with a small smile. I told her I had the level in the truck. She said she knew, and she'd done it herself, and half a degree was something she'd earned. I left them alone. She was right. Dolores stopped me in the utility room last week. She is always finding me in the utility room, and she didn't say anything for a moment. She just looked at me with the expression she saves for systems that have finally resolved into what they were supposed to be. "Then," she said, "I told you," and handed me the next work order and walked out. I spent 3 years keeping this building running by paying attention to everything that was close to failing before it failed. I woke at 6 every morning and walked every floor and listened for what the building was telling me, and I acted on what I heard. I thought I was good at paying attention. I thought that was enough. What I hadn't figured out yet is that you can be an expert at reading a system and still be standing in the wrong room. You can know exactly what's failing and keep it on the list, because addressing it would mean depending on the outcome, and depending on the outcome means it might go wrong, and going wrong means something you've already been through once in a parking lot on Route 40, and which you decided wasn't worth the risk of again. Maybe that's just what it takes. Maybe you have to spend enough years maintaining things before you understand what the maintenance is for. Maybe you have to know the difference between a patch and a real repair before you can recognize, in a woman carrying 2 bags of groceries up 3 flights of stairs alone, in 3 coughs through a door at 6:45 in the morning, in a sticky note that says, "Experimental, do not expect much," that the thing you've been taking care of has always been bigger than the building. I almost kept walking that Thursday morning. I had reasons. I had a list. I stood 3 steps down the hallway, and I turned around anyway. For no reason I could have named at the time except that I had heard something through a closed door, and I was the kind of man who had been trained to know that when something has been running quiet for too long, that is not the same as running fine. I made soup. I sat down. I didn't make it into something she owed me. And from that one ordinary Thursday morning in November, from a pot I'd been cooking from since my mother taught me not to rush it, from a knock on a door I almost didn't knock on, from a chair I almost didn't sit down in, I ended up with everything I hadn't known I was still missing, and with someone who had been keeping very careful track of things all along. and who had been waiting with the patience of a person who has learned to carry things alone, for someone who would finally show up and pay attention before it became an emergency.